Lots of cop shenanigans going on in Alberta. First Nations people are 8 times more likely to die from poisoned drugs in Alberta. Last-minute deal averts a strike at the TTC, and Korean Samsung workers take job action for the first time in that company's history. Good morning. It's Friday, June 7th. I'm Nora, coming to you still from the beautiful city of Edmonton. Here are your headlines. There's lots of police news today, and let's start with the Alberta Association of Chiefs of Police. The organization created something they called a quote-unquote coalition of the willing to convince people to vote for the United Conservative Party's drug policies in the lead-up to the 2023 election in May. The revelations were found by Ewan Thompson's Drug Data Decoded blog, who managed to get the strategy document. Thompson has found that the police supported the so-called recovery-based treatment programs, aka attacking safe supply, and that the police wanted to frame overdoses and social disorder as something that has left businesses and residents feeling less safe. Doesn't that sound familiar? Haven't we heard that narrative nonstop in all parts of Canada? Interesting. Thompson goes through the strategy document in detail, and you should check it out to see how they influence political conversations on drug use and policing. But I'll finish this with a quote from Thompson, who talks about how the strategy doc, quote, hints at an underlying purpose of the AACP roadmap to ensure police are centered in drug policy conversations, to guarantee, as former Calgary police officer and current Minister of Public Safety Mike Ellis put it, while the 2023 provincial election neared, quote, the police are going to be at the pointy end of the stick. The police will be at the center of drug policy, unquote. Remember that whenever you hear about drug use being automatically linked to public safety, rather than primarily as a matter of safety for the drug user, there are many strategic hands in the mix who want to ensure that you understand this issue in such a narrow frame that you believe that the only option available is to fix these issues with more policing. There's no coincidence here that after a massive movement calling on defunding the police, that the police have found the exact way that they convince average Canadians that their presence is absolutely critical. If you spend any time around people who use drugs and people who use drugs and who are marginalized and so who are using drugs that aren't necessarily safe, you will know that the police have absolutely nothing to do with keeping those people safe. Next, and not unrelated, CBC News' Robson Fletcher and Joel Dryden are reporting that Indigenous people are experiencing far more loss of life as a result of the opioid crisis than non-Indigenous people. In Alberta, First Nations people die due to opioid use 8 times more often than the rest of the population. The rate of death among First Nations people in the province is 200 deaths per 100,000 people. For the rest of the population, that rate is closer to 22 deaths per 100,000 people. The crisis is particularly bad in southern Alberta among First Nations there. CBC talked with Amber Jensen, who said this, quote, I'm seeing families where there's hardly anybody left, unquote. The population particularly hit hard are parents, and in the wake of these deaths are hundreds of children who are orphaned, making the problem even worse. At least 1,867 Albertans died from opioids in 2023. And gosh, I have a hard time reading this and not think of the direct destruction that Israel has wrought over Palestine right now. Just in Canada, we found more quiet ways to do that. Let's stay in Alberta, but pivot to talking again about cops. Cop behavior, not drug use. Duncan Kinney at the Progress Report is reporting that a publication ban has been lifted in the case of Lee Van Beaver, a man who had been kicked in the head several times by Edmonton Police Constable Ollie Olison. The attack was caught on camera outside of Ritchie Market. Kinney notes that 1 year before, Edmonton police also beat Wesley Bidlock Hawkins after having chased him for 35 minutes. Oh, and the specific cop who beat Bidlock Hawkins was Ollie Olison. Bidlock Hawkins' lawyer, Kate Engel, said this, quote, "I'm surprised that given his conduct and the presence of the Police Act complaint, that Olison was permitted to remain on the tactical team and be given opportunities to commit the same misconduct that he committed against Mr. Bidlock Hawkins," unquote. Olison resigned from the force in late 2021, months after he beat Van Beaver. Now to Ontario for cop news, again, this time from the province's SIU. They have decided to press charges against Constable Taylor Auger, a Thunder Bay police officer who had a quote-unquote interaction with a 33-year-old who they had arrested and who was then sent to hospital and diagnosed with a, quote, serious injury. Unquote. Of course, the SIU documents are always very thin on the details, and then they say they're not going to comment any further because it's under investigation, because it's so easy to just do that. Auger has been charged with 1 count of assault causing bodily harm. The abuse happened in April 2023, and the man was arrested for being intoxicated in public. Okay. Next, non-cop news. A last-minute deal has been reached between transit workers and the Toronto Transit Commission, averting a strike. CP24's Brian Aguilar is reporting that the Amalgamated Transit Union Local 113 reached a framework settlement that they say will form the basis of more conversations and then a plan they will bring to their members for ratification. ATU 113 President Marvin Alfred said that the framework isn't a deal, though. TTC CEO Rick Leary said that it was a tentative contract, though he said there had to be some I's dotted, some T's crossed, and other stuff hammered out. The big issue in these negotiations has been job security, something that the union says that management addressed at the 11th hour. Well, not literally. The news came out at the 12th hour and a half, local time. And finally, Samsung workers in South Korea are taking a coordinated sick leave today in the first industrial action ever to happen at Samsung. The National Samsung Electronics Union represents tens of thousands of workers who work at Samsung. Bargaining has been ongoing since January, reports Al Jazeera, but the workers are fighting for 1 more day of annual leave and more transparency in the company's performance-based bonuses. Samsung is offering a 5.1% wage increase this year. Samsung is privately owned and the largest of the family-owned conglomerates in South Korea. They made $4.85 billion US in Q1, which was almost 10 times higher than the year before. Employees at Samsung were not able to unionize for years. Al Jazeera writes that the oppressive anti-union tactics by Samsung kept the union out for almost 50 years. But the union formed in the late 2010s. Those are your headlines for Friday, June 7th. I'm Nora. Oh, it's Friday. Okay, I don't get to take the weekend off at all. I'm running a conference in Edmonton, but I have to say, I almost skipped this week for the daily news because I've been doing this on top of me also organizing a conference in Edmonton. Has not been easy. Thank you so much to the script support that we have from a worker who prefers to remain anonymous and who's amazing, and their work is awesome. And I can't say that I'm not sad that I don't have to do this for another 2 days because I'm going to take the 2 days off while I focus on my other work. But I do hope that you've enjoyed these very late night recording sessions for me. I made a joke online about how I'm doing this like with one eye open and half drunk, and it's only kind of true. Tonight, both my eyes are open. You are listening to this podcast at sandynora.com, on the Real News Network podcast feed, and anywhere you get your podcasts. I hope you have a wonderful weekend. It's my last weekend of being 39. So, I don't know. Wish me luck for what's coming next week.